All right, I think we're ready to go, Amy.
Okay, awesome. Thanks everybody for joining. We are so excited to see you today, and I'm really excited about the content. This is a beautiful story and case study. Welcome to the Design for Dignity virtual sessions. Today we're going to hear about how a community came together to think deeper about real problems and lean into the wisdom of the community to solve them. So let me introduce our amazing duo for today's session. Dana Peterson has served as a respected school superintendent, and she's an influential advocate for community-based education in Sonoma County, California. So throughout her 27-year career, she's demonstrated an unwavering commitment to fostering community schools that serve as hubs for holistic learning and support. She's particularly passionate about advancing self-healing communities, emphasizing the importance of mental health, resilience, and community collaboration. On a personal note, she thrives most when she travels locally and abroad, entertains her family and friends, and she actually finishes her DIY projects, which I find very admirable. And then we have my dear friend Chris, who is the founder of the ILN and my co-founder of the Design for Dignity conference. We will have an announcement coming on the 2025 conference soon, so please stay tuned. He is a change rebel for good. He founded ILN in 2006 to focus on improving innovation systems. Before that, he led innovation at Kaiser Permanente for 20 years and at Hope Lab Foundation for 5 years, creating award-winning and impactful solutions. His approach combines human-centered design, systems thinking, and the art of gathering. In his spare time, he obsesses about fitness, musicals, and skiing between the trees, which I think is dangerous. So clearly you are an amazing human, Chris. And I'm so excited to hear from you all today. So Chris, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Amy. And yes, we're very excited for this upcoming announcement. So as Amy said, please stay tuned. And just a little context about our virtual sessions. So this is our second one for Design for Dignity. We're featuring some things that came from the conference and some things that we hoped to present at the conference. And this is one of the hoped ones. There were some travel challenges and we had to postpone this talk, but I could not be any more excited to partner on this talk with Dana. This topic of systems and design is right to the heart of what I do, and on social impact on something as important as adverse childhood experiences. So just a little bit about the ILN. There are three things in this practice: consulting on systems thinking and humanity-centered design, advising, so really helping organizations think about how best to build and apply innovation and design infrastructure, and then facilitating creative gatherings and bringing up events like Design for Dignity. And I get the deep pleasure to bring all three of these things, consulting, advising, and facilitation, to the lower Russian River. I'm about to turn this over to my friend Dana, but before I do, just a couple of things. If you are interested in closed captioning, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little box that says CC. You can click that and it'll show you everything that we're saying. Also, on the far right of your screen, you'll see three little symbols: a triangle, a square, and a circle. If you click that, we're going to be using the Q&A function today. Part of that reason is we're using Gemini AI, and it will take those questions and it will embed them in the transcripts in a way that's meaningful. So if you have questions, we're going to ask you to click over to the questions tab. I'm going to leave that open on my screen so I'll be able to see them. And if you happen to use the chat, Amy is monitoring chat and we'll be able to take a peek at that as well. Any questions on technology use before we continue on? Okay, over to you, Dana.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. We're just going to jump in. So I would like to welcome you to Project 100. And here you can meet some of our incredible and zealous stakeholders you'll see featured in one of our first initial gatherings. I'll give you a little bit of background on Project 100. The work of Project 100 was convened by 3 collaborative organizations located in Guerneville, California. The conveners are West County Health Centers, Guerneville School District, and Riverhead Children's Coast Children's Services. We each have about 1 to 3 individuals that serve on the core team that are responsible for driving and supporting the ongoing efforts of our work. The partnership was both intentional and also momentous because it represented a shift in owning the problem and distributing the roles and responsibilities amongst us all, instead of each sector of service just working in isolation to address the challenge. So it was really the first time that all 3 of our entities, which are the largest agencies in that area, came together with a focus. And not only did we come together, we were able to bring in Chris and ILN. So that was also part of that magic sauce to make this all work. And we'll be talking more about what he brought to the work. So let's go ahead and we're going to just dig in. So about the project, first we'll just start with our kiddos right here. These beautiful kiddos here are first graders from Guerneville School who are curious about their world and their place in it. This picture actually took place in our school garden. They are at the center of our systems thinking and the work, and that is who we hold ourselves accountable to. A little background prior to this work. And even prior to Guerneville becoming a California Community School Partner, the district participated in a 1.5-year-long process of asset mapping and community schools needs assessment exercises. And this was in the period of about 21 to 2022. This work was in direct response to a series of traumatic and compounded events, such as multiple devastating floods, compounded wildfires, and of course the pandemic, which all occurred in a 4-year period in our school community. Upon students returning to in-person learning in 2021, we could see these compounded traumas were severely impacting every aspect of our students' lives, especially our little ones. You know, you think about these 8-year-olds, by the time they were 8, all of these events had happened in that period of their life, in their most developmental and crucial years. Okay. Through the taking stock process, which included, a variety of techniques, we had one-on-one interviews, we had focus group discussions, surveys, we did deep data dives, student cum reviews. We learned that the students in our semi-rural community were experiencing even more exposure to ACEs experience, adverse childhood experiences, in the 3 main categories of abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And that was more than we had ever seen before. And these lived and compounded experiences were directly contributing to the toxic stress they were immersed in. With a high and growing number of younger students experiencing ACEs scores of 4 or more, we knew they were at high risk for negative health, social, and emotional outcomes. So a call to action to address some of the vicious cycles that were occurring was desperately needed. So in 2023, leaders from West County Health Centers, Guerneville School District, and Riverhead Coast began a journey to understand the forces that impact the toxic stress for our 0 to 5-year-olds in the lower Russian River area. Hence, Project 100, which refers to the 100 babies born annually in the area, was launched. We are guided by emerging science of the impact of toxic stress on the health and well-being of all humans, and outsized impact, especially on our 0 to 5-year-olds. This group chose the approach to work through the lens of system and design. Our systems mapping work is focused on 2 specific areas of impact. One is reducing ACEs exposures and experiences for our 0 to 5-year-olds in the lower Russian River area, and also, and equally important, is improving school readiness, because especially at this time, we knew that only 44% of our kindergartners were deemed kinder ready. And that's simply, not acceptable for us. And we had assessed that through different various benchmarks for kindergarten readiness. And then here you'll see just some of the main areas that we are focusing on for goals and outcomes, such as, promoting trauma-informed care practices in our schools, our healthcare and social services. So making sure that that is across all of our systems of care, strengthening those protective factors. And then in regards to school readiness, one that really stands out to me is demonstrating coping strategies and also students being able to regulate their emotions and behaviors. That was one of the biggest challenges we were facing after the pandemic, especially for our TKs, those kiddos that are about 4 years old. It was a huge challenge returning or just attending school because they had never, most of them had not had many early childhood education experiences due to COVID and the other disasters that they had experienced. Okay. Sorry, sometimes I'm still getting used to this platform as well.
Yep.
All right, Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you. So that's just a little background of how we came to be.
Great, thanks, Dana. So we're going to pause the storytelling about this project for a second, and I'm just going to do a quick and dirty primer on systems thinking, just so that we're all on the same page as we continue the story in just a minute or two. I warn you, this is from a practitioner's perspective, not an academic. If you Google systems thinking, you can go down rabbit holes of deep thought and confusion about systems thinking. So I'm presenting it from a practitioner's perspective. So there are many, many problems that any of us could address in many different kinds of ways. And as soon as we think about the problems in a particular area or a system, it becomes bounded, and we start understanding these problems in context to the system that they're bounded in. And as soon as you bound them, they all become connected in some way. And the question is, does it matter? Does it matter that these problems are all interconnected? So if it's hard to get into a waiting room of a hospital, and it's hard for an executive assistant for the CEO of that hospital system to schedule something, those are two problems, but are they connected? And the answer is maybe. Like perhaps there's a technology system that's messing up both those issues. And if you try to solve only one of those, you're actually missing what the real problem was, in that case, the technology piece. So in essence, we are thinking about, in systems, can we find a particular problem that if we address it could potentially fix many things or have positive impact across the system, and maybe wipe out some of those problems that we didn't even have to address because we found something that's interconnected on them. So for me as a practitioner, it is a strategic tool that helps us apply our very limited resources for outsized impact on a system. So that is how I think about systems thinking. And for me, it is connected to human-centered design. This helps point us to the problem, and then human-centered design helps us think about possible interventions on that particular node. So back to the story. So system and ACEs. So Dana laid out us coming together. And from a systems perspective, what I found really powerful and why I was so excited to jump into this is that it is rare to find three very different sectors of a community wanting to work together. So this was a health system, a school district, and a community-based organization. As Dana said, very different perspectives, but all committing to one another to get this work moving. And one other piece before we jump back into the story, even from the very beginning, and in fact, if you remember the way Dana described themselves as the lead conveners, we made very specific choices to distribute power as widely as we could. So we chose to call them conveners instead of leaders. And it really helped right from the get-go to ensure that our stakeholders who were present could feel like they owned this as well. So we gathered that picture Dana showed you of all the folks holding on to each other. We gathered them and we posed this question to them. What forces account for the current state of early childhood development? This is a really important question, and it's phrased very neutrally. So if you read this question, you don't detect any negativity or positivity. We just want to know, why is the current state the way it is? There's bad things and good things. So neutrally stated, and we didn't zero in on toxic stress. We asked just simply about early childhood development. So it really opened up the aperture for folks to share all kinds of things that are account for the current state. So that group came together and they came up with about 500 different forces. And they started grouping them into clusters and then started assembling those forces into causal loops. And I'll say a little bit more about the biggest causal loop in the system in just a moment. And over time, they took those causal loops and connected them all to one another, creating this, what probably at first glance seems like a pretty complicated map. I can tell you, to those who created it, it just makes sense. This is their wisdom in action. Now, if you look at the very center of the systems map, you will see a dark bluish purple area that everything is connected to. That is called the deep structure. And that emerges as you start connecting all the bits and pieces together. And for this project, it turned out to be a vicious deep structure. And the way we read our maps goes almost exactly as I wrote out here. And you can start on any node you want. I happen to start at the caretaker and household node. So as caretaker and household well-being decreases, it causes a decrease in safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments, which causes a decrease in accessing formal and informal support, which causes a decrease in caretaker and household well-being. So that's the circular loop that gets created. This is driving that entire map. This could be a virtuous cycle. If we apply the right kinds of pressure, all of these things could flip from decreasing to increasing. So let me show you a little bit about what, oops, I'm seeing something pop up in the question. I wonder if you found a negativity bias in the forces affecting the state of related, who are able to cite related, did earlier asset mapping add a useful positive lens? Caitlin, maybe can you come off mute for a second and maybe say a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I appreciated the statement of a very neutral kind of what are the forces affecting. And I wonder if people tend to go negative just by default and thinking about these things. And if the earlier asset mapping that was mentioned, I don't know if that at all influenced or gave you some thoughts on, oh, we do have some positive things going as well.
Yeah, for sure. And we force them, it's a force function to think of positive and negative. So we call them inhibitors and accelerators. And so first we do a big brainstorm around all of the accelerators. So how do things become better in the community? Then we do all the inhibitors to early childhood development. So it's a force function to make sure, because to your point, it's easy to immediately go into the negative. So it's a force function to make sure we do both. And you'll see as I go into the next section. So let me just pop back. So this map, you can see all the color coding. So those are different themes that feed into the deep structure. These are those themes. And these themes, you can see red is mostly negative, yellow is mixed, negative, positive, and green is mostly positive. So there are some very positive things, like community-based organizations and family-centered schools are adding a lot of positivity to accessing formal and informal support. But it's not enough to overcome the negative things that are feeding into that node. You can see on the far left-hand screen, the well-being node, there's all kinds of very negative things that are feeding into that node. So these are the various thematic areas that are feeding the deep structure to be a vicious cycle. And again, how might we think about slowing down the viciousness, or maybe even flipping it to be virtuous? So how do we do that? So we gather them again, and we ask them to take a look at the map and start analyzing where on this map do they perceive as a community to be nodes that would have outsized impact. And those nodes are the ones that are in the bright green. And so they identified a whole bunch of spots on this map that they believe as a community, if we tackle them, we could have outsized impact and maybe it's becoming a more virtuous cycle. Our team prioritized, and the ones that are all green are the ones that we're tackling first: early childhood intervention, community schools, basic needs, elevating community voices, family stressors, parental use of drugs and for coping, and screening for maternal child mental health services. These are the first batch of nodes that we're starting to address. And I'm going to now flip this back over to Dana to continue the story. Oh, you're on mute, Dana.
That might help. Thank you. Sorry. So in part of our work, or a big part of it, not only are we coming together, but also building our own infrastructure to be able to do this. So we have some examples of tools and strategies and curriculum that we've put into place. I'm just going to walk you through those a little bit. Here is our a picture of Notion. So this is a website that we created for Project 100. We're using Notion website tool as an informative platform, for sharing all of our work to date with our stakeholders. And it's also a place for the general public to learn and dive in more personally with this work. It's intended to be a working website instead of a traditional polished website. So for the most part, it is also in English and Spanish. That's something we've been working with translation and trying to make it as accessible as it can be. Everything we do is stored and available on Notion. So it has all of our monthly presentations, training materials, access to the entire system map itself, wishes for different projects that we're working on, contact information, project updates, and even more. So we have a simple URL, project100.org, if you'd like to take a deeper dive yourself.
Nope, project100.info.
Yeah,
no worries. I did put it in the chat, so folks have access to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know that. Mine just comes up naturally, so thank you. Okay. So then the next part of our infrastructure is the monthly curriculum. And here you'll see the topics that we've had, that we have for each month. And this has been an exciting and developing part of the infrastructure of this work, because each month we have what I call a mini lesson, where we feature a training and kind of doses on a specific skill that can be immediately applied to a project. And these are just some of the examples, and we'll talk a little bit more of the impact that these have had for our stakeholders. But they're about 25 to 30 minutes on each session. And the metrics we're exploring, as a part of building our own infrastructure, we formed a metrics ad hoc group, and I'm on that group. And we just began working, there's to define, both baseline metrics and then also, the process and outcome metrics that we're going to use. We will be providing metrics for the two goal areas of reducing ACEs and school readiness, as well as specific data points for the various projects as they identify them. You'll see some of the metrics we are working to compile, and then we plan, our goal is to have a one-pager of baseline metrics by about the end of March as a starting point of where our kiddos are right now. And I have to say, this is not as easy as it looks to compile this data and to find it. I feel like we are definitely mining it, and we're working with different, at the county level, locally, state level, and also, just to compile, around school readiness and then ACEs reductions. So you can see the areas of perinatal health and well-being, and then school readiness as well. And then some of our projects, this is where it gets fun. As Chris stated, we have different ones that we've already launched. So I'm just going to give you a tasting, if you will, and a little flavor of each one of these. Right here, we have our, this is the Care Closet project. And this is our most operational project to date. Has been fully launched in fall of 24, and it is at the Guerneville school site. So you can see it's a place that has, basic essentials and care items to meet the needs of our school community. It's available to our families as a part of our integrated student support system, which is a main one of the 4 pillars of a community school. And we were able to do this in partnership with Project 100 and also our sponsoring school foundation. And we've had to date about 10% of our families accessing it on a regular basis. They make appointments. What's also been neat about this is we're using Notion to help socialize it as well, and to help seek volunteers. We have a wish list going there, so folks can also sign up and not only use our website, but also Notion. So we hope to grow that more, but there'll be more to come on that one. The next project, just to back up, that was coming obviously from the community schools node that Chris was referencing. And then the next one in early childhood intervention is Kinder Gym. It's a free bilingual drop-in play-based learning program. And this project is an example of kind of tackling what we call low-hanging fruit opportunities with maximum outcomes. Kinder Gym in the past was a staple in the Guerneville community. It historically served our families in a variety of ways through providing free play-based opportunities, parenting support, networking opportunities, parental trainings, basic needs navigation, many things. But the program unfortunately lost its funding and its location post-pandemic. So it was clearly identified as a leverage point to address, the very early childhood prevention needs in the map. So fortunately, the project currently has lots of new traction as the work group has now secured a new location in the area of Guerneville, in the local area, and the Guerneville district. We've made application to a local grant called Measure O. It's a county-sponsored grant around mental health, and we are hoping that if we're awarded, that we would have some key funding for the next 5 years to make this operational once again. So please cross your fingers for us and send some good energy for that grant as well. And then the next one, vending machines. This one is under parental use of drugs for coping area. And these are harm reduction vending machines. And we are deep in the planning and pre-implementation stages of providing 3 unique vending machines in the area, which in addition to Narcan and fentanyl strips, they will also contain first aid supplies, condoms, feminine products, and much more. We've partnered with the county of Sonoma to help provide these, and other providers as well. So it started with the county, and then we have other partnering agencies that are helping to sponsor them. And then with our stakeholders, we're working to gain insight, on and get their input and wisdom on ideal locations, opportunities for socializing these machines when they're operational, community conversations on harm reduction, how to go about that, what the contents of the machine should be, accessibility, all of those good things. Our goal is to have one operational in the lower Russian River area by the end of March. So that one is coming along.
Just one other comment on that one.
Yes,
and the other aspect that we're trying to work towards is that everything is free. So you can get the things you need in the moment you need them. And not have to load it with a credit card or dollars. You're trying to get to an Narcan. We want to make this really open and accessible.
And they're actually also even smart as well. So they'll work by entering a zip code, and you just verify an age, and we're still working on all of that. But it will also start to track. It can track by zip code and what was accessed and things like that. So that's going to be interesting data points to have as well. So thank you for adding that. All right. So basic needs, accessing food programs. So as we know, food programs can be stressful and confusing to navigate for families. The effort will focus on simplifying the family's needs. So in order to approach this, We began a pilot strategy, which is pretty exciting. This is just one example, but this week, some of our members of our core team, along with Chris, we hosted a unique convening where we invited families with young children to have a homemade dinner with us. We had yummy pozole soup and participate in some conversations and activities with them to understand their lived experience, especially around accessing food programs. And our intent is, the reason why we're trying this and piloting it is to talk with and learn from those who are most affected by the challenges. We want to work to understand what they need and also why it's important to them. So we did drawing exercises and things like that. And it was quite moving, and it's amazing. Oh, good. You got them right there. So to date, we've hosted one dinner night, and we're already preparing for more upcoming events around the other various projects and having key questions and conversations to help guide that work for all of our projects. Okay, and so here, I think it's just kind of a reminder and just to see, where these projects are playing back into the map, as Chris had shared there. So these are just 4 examples, and I'll go into a little bit more depth as to what we have going on here. So this is a page from Notions, and as you can imagine, many things and ideas and potential strategies come up. And so this is where we hold all of the work that is happening. So just to kind of highlight a little bit and walk you through. So you'll see under the ideas, there are 27 different ideas to address the themes and potential leverage points that we discussed. So when something's coming up, we put it first in ideas, and then it may move into a project. And so you'll see here that for the planning purposes of those ideas, then 6 has moved into planning, and then 3 are currently in progress, like I just described: Kinder Gym, Connection, Recreation, and then the vending machines. And then implementing is the care closet, and then self-healing communities, which I didn't give all the examples today. And I was going to say, Chris, did you want to add to this as well?
One really special thing about this board is that every single one of these items is connected to a leverage point, and every single project that is in planning or forward, there's also a quick high-level theory on how it affects the map. So we're each time, we're not just trying to imagine projects that will make things better. It is strategically connected to the node, and then we go to that node and see what it's connected to see, is the thing that we're proposing, will it really have an effect on changing the viciousness of that deep structure? So everything is connected right from the beginning of the work of systems thinking.
And there's a question. Did you want to address that? I believe it's in the chat, Chris, or do we want to wait?
Sure. It says, how are the theories generated? Jeff, can you maybe just say a little bit more? Come off mute.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that there's a hypothesis underneath of each of these for how you think they'll impact the system. How did you go about starting those? Where did those come from? How are folks engaged?
Yeah, it comes directly from the map. So they go to the node. Like, so for example, the care closet is connected to community schools. If we go to the community schools node on the map, we can see exactly what's connected, driving it, and what it's driving. And so we can see what a positive or negative effects will trickle out across the entire map. So that's the power of having the map at your fingertips when you're thinking about, what can I build that we want to see rippling? We don't just want to fix that node. And so this just helps a little bit more thinking through on the kinds of things that we'll do. Yeah. I see another question from Amy. Our community public schools in California. Dana, you should tackle that one.
Yeah. Can you read it aloud for me?
Our community schools, public schools in California, for those of us not familiar with that term.
Yes. Thank you. Great question. Yes, they are definitely public schools. It is, it's a framework, and so a community school framework, and it's built on four pillars. Is that framework is implemented across the United States. California 2 years ago made the investment to actually provide funding, and for those that apply and begin implementation. So when we refer to California community schools, it's kind of that funding there. It's a 5-year program. But the pillars of it, when we think about it, are integrated student supports, extended learning opportunities, community collaboration, and facilitating community leadership. So it's all the things that we know make a great school, but it's when we put all 4 of those pillars and implement those 4 at the same time. So it's definitely public school. And Guerneville, we are a small school district. We are a single site school district. We have about 180 students. So we are small and mighty, and we were the first implementing community school in our county, and we have 40 school districts. So we've, I think, kind of been trailblazers in that work, and I'm very proud of it. So thanks for the question. All right. This is something we added a few days ago, and I think is really important. You know, we're only 1/3 of the way through the work, and we continue to reflect and kind of what we are already seeing as, to me, what gems that are coming out of this work. But I'll just kind of walk you through a little bit. You know, as a community, it's been powerful to just learn the systems and design approach. Every time we come together, you know, we have different organizations, community-based organizations, public agencies, and also just folks that any volunteer work they're doing, as they seem to really appreciate the process in and itself, and the facilitation of it. Then there's an even greater commitment than ever of reducing ACEs in the lower Russian River area. And as we said, you know, it's the first time it really feels shared. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, I've been saying schools can't do this work alone, because we did feel isolated in the health industry, you know, saying the same thing. And for me, one of the biggest takeaways is that, you know, it takes the whole community to make the community whole. And this is really feeling that with this work. And then it's also been a vehicle for community building and capacity to tackle complex issues, no matter what that work is. So, you know, especially the curriculum, if you will, having these mini lessons, I'm hearing folks, I'm taking this back. We're going to try this strategy in their work. And so to see that spread throughout the county and bigger, I mean, that's what it's also about. So we're really seeing that capacity build across sectors and different systems. So
yeah, just a funny little story from just 2 nights ago. So we have a local translator that comes to all of our events and translates for those who are monolingual Spanish speakers. And she pulled me aside and was just like, I'm starting to apply some of the techniques that you've taught during those sessions to other work that I'm doing, and it's changing how I think about problems and how I think about solutions. So even if the translator is starting to pick up new skills just from being a part of this. So I just kind of love that little vignette.
Great. And we're just getting started. So I think this is where we're going to open up questions and some more comments or dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this work. It's just so outstanding, and it just like gives me hope, like, period. It's very intelligent with the systems thinking, but also how you've put it into action is just a wonderful thing. And it reminds me of a project I did recently with the state of Massachusetts to discover how children and families impacted by substance use disorder and overdose could be better supported. And one insight coming out of that workshop was that services are really hard to get access to. People don't know what they're eligible for. It'd be nice if there was a one-stop shop to sort of help people understand the things that can help them. So I heard you kind of allude to that with the food, but I'm wondering if that is a component of the community-based schools, or just of the programming in general that you've keyed into.
Well, it's both for sure. So, you know, with with community schools, and one of our initiatives as a district has been whole child and whole family health. So, the basic needs is just a huge part of that. So that was just another one where we just saw that alignment. And I'll let Chris, you can kind of build off that a little bit more as well. But it's definitely a component within every community schools, because we know if our children, aren't coming with full bellies or nutritional food, they can't learn. And so we have a number of food access programs that we're doing at the school site, but it's much bigger in the entire community. And that's where we feel like, okay, how do we, combine those resources? But the navigation of it is a real challenge. So, because there's so many things, but yet families don't know how to access them. So that's what this work was helping with.
And so, and there are also government programs that are a part of the food piece. So all different ways that people are accessing nutrition and if we think about the three different organizations, the community-based organization, River to Coast, they have food distribution as a part of their model. The health system is now actually starting to engage with one of our keynotes from Design for Dignity, Elizabeth Markle, who is focused on food as medicine. And so from a healthcare perspective, there are food angles that are coming into this, but the food, as Dana just said, is just one piece of basic needs. There's other pieces that we broke out. Our housing is fundamental to lowering ACEs. So isn't low wages. So the kind of income that we're able to bring into our families, that is a major component of basic needs. So it's a broad category, and there are many ways to zero in on the node and figure out what should we be tackling. And so right now, the food one is trying to untangle the many ways that people are getting access to nutrition and how confusing it can be. So that's the first piece that they're starting to tackle. Any other thoughts or comments?
A question. Can you talk a little bit more about just the creation of the project, how the three organizations came to come together and pull this together?
Sure, I can kind of give the seeds and then work with Chris. So we were already the district, we have a community schools collaborative of partnerships. So we were working already with West County Health Centers. We also have another kind of chapter organizations called Russian River Area Resources and Advocates. And that's how we started just building relationships with all three of these organizations. Were in that group. And it's just a group that comes together once a month. We share, updates and what's happening in the community and needs and that kind of thing. But Dr. Cunningham, who's our executive director, is the executive of West County Health. We started really looking at how can we serve students within the school day. And so started having those questions, and then and started having a little bit of partnership, but we weren't looking at the system. We didn't have a strategy of any kind to really address the forces. It was what I call, downstream approaches. We were just kind of putting Band-Aids, and then it was like, we have to do something bigger. We have to figure out how to bring our resources and the community. We need to solve these issues with them. And so Dr. Cunningham was also working with Chris. And so that started I think a lot of the synergy around it. And then we did have some funding as well with our community schools work to invest in Project 100. And so that was part of how we were able to bring Chris in to use that funding as we were engaging our stakeholders to address, serious challenges that we had identified early on as a community school. But the other agencies were also doing the same kind of work within their health sector as a community-based organization. So, and Chris, you can probably elaborate to that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also a story of serendipity. So Dr. Cunningham and I serve on a board together for about 7 years now, the Center for Care Innovations. And during my time at Hope Lab is kind of really where I started baking systems thinking into my approaches. And each board meeting, like during breaks, me and Jason would huddle because he was just fascinated by systems thinking. And so it was like seeds being planted over time. And then all of a sudden he had all the pieces in his head. everything that Dana just shared with you, but then also the seeds of systems thinking and human-centered design. And he had this idea, like how might we bring all of this together? So intentionality and serendipity.
Definitely. And we were, that was one of the ways we started partnering, because they were deep in the work of human-centered design. And so they wanted to try the approaches and some of the different techniques. So we were, when I was saying that we had one-on-one interviews and those kind of things as part of our needs assessment, we were doing that with West County Health Centers. They were interviewing students, our staff, parents, and trying out some of this. So we were getting a lot of this data. And it's like, what in trauma was the number one thing that was coming up of how our student and what they needed. And so then that's where we're like, wow, we got to have an approach for this. So that was probably in 2022 when we were doing a lot of the human-centered design at the school itself with West County Health Centers.
So you see a question from Kelly, and then I think Hillary has one too. So Kelly's question is, any thoughts or suggestions for doing something like this on a bigger scale, e.g. a bigger district?
Yes, for sure. I mean, systems thinking, it has been applied from small-ish to global. And I think it just depends on the challenge and the commitments for the organizations and those who want to be the lead conveners. It gets infinitely more complicated. The larger it gets, and the more competition between those who are a part of this. So it's something that needs to be navigated carefully, but it's a powerful approach. And again, from small all the way to global. I hope I answered your question well enough there.
And we did invite other neighboring school districts as well to participate. You know, it's a very open process. And so, because again, it's not about just our school community, it's about the entire Russian River area. So, you know, that's a good 50-mile radius, more than that. Our district alone boundaries are 32 miles. So, you know, we did invite other school districts, but it's definitely scalable. And it's one of the things, you know, as a superintendent, I work with other superintendents is how are you engaging in this work with your community? Because, you know, you can't do it alone at your school district. And so hopefully our story can help inspire them as well.
So Hillary, I think you get the last question or reflection.
Yes, thanks. I'll try to slip this in really fast. My question is, do you think about systems thinking and design thinking as like first you do systems thinking and then you do design thinking, or did you see them more as like integrated?
That is a really good question. I do not believe in linear. And
Good systems thinking right there.
Yeah, and so it is cyclical for sure. I do find when first stepping in that systems thinking can, it's less approachable, but more important. So it's so if folks are like, oh my gosh, like we just need to start solving something, we can try to solve something and use the learning to trigger a systems thinking approach. But I do think systems thinking is better first for that statement I made early on. With the limited resources we have, how do we apply them best? But you know, Jason, as I said, was primed for 7 years of him and I having huddled conversations on a board to appreciate and understand systems thinking. That's rare. So you can start with either, but if you have the opportunity to start with systems first, I think you can get more power into what you're actually trying to accomplish.
Plus future thinking.
Yes, that would be helpful too. Yeah. But it sounds like what you're saying, that like design thinking is like more satisfying almost. Like you get like a kind of a quicker win, whereas systems thinking, it takes longer, it's not as clear, so you have to have more patience, but they go together well.
For sure. And that is a great last comment. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Sorry for the technology glitch at the beginning. We will work that out so that doesn't happen again. And I'm just so glad to see all your faces.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great.
Thank you
so
all.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Dana, how do you feel?
Fine. Good. Great job, guys.